I came home to find my garage lock cut clean off and my snowplow missing. At first, I thought it was just another theft. Then I checked my cameras and saw my HOA's favorite Karen towing it away like she owned it. What she didn't know? I used to be police, and I handled it exactly by the book, in a way she'll never forget. I retired from law enforcement about 3 years ago after just over 2 decades on the job. And if there's one thing that career teaches you, it's that people will always find new and creative ways to surprise you with their stupidity. I didn't move into Ridgewood Estates for excitement. I moved there for quiet. It was one of those neat, overly organized suburban neighborhoods with clean sidewalks, identical mailboxes, and an HOA that liked to remind everyone it existed at least twice a week. I wasn't a fan of HOAs, but the house had a large detached garage, a wide driveway, and just enough space to keep my equipment without anyone bothering me too much. At least that's what I thought. Winters in that area are no joke, and I had invested in a heavy-duty snowplow attachment for my truck, not just for myself, but because I liked helping out a few of the older neighbors when the snow got bad. I kept it stored in my detached garage, secured with a solid steel chain and lock when not in use. It wasn't cheap, and more importantly, it wasn't something you just walk off with unless you came prepared. About 2 months after the first snowfall, the HOA started pushing a new community snow management initiative, which was basically their way of trying to control who could clear snow, how it was done, and what equipment could be used. They sent out emails, posted notices, and even tried to encourage residents to rely on approved vendors instead of handling things themselves. I ignored it. My driveway, my equipment, my time. That should have been the end of it. But Ridgewood had a Karen. Every neighborhood does. Her name was Linda, and she carried herself like she had been elected mayor of the sidewalks. Always walking around with a clipboard, always inserting herself into conversations, always talking about community standards like they were federal law. I had a few brief interactions with her early on, mostly her telling me that my snowplow wasn't on the approved equipment list for community clearing. I told her it wasn't for the community. It was for me. She didn't like that answer. Over the next few weeks, I noticed her paying a little too much attention to my garage whenever she passed by. Slowing down, looking, taking mental notes, the kind of behavior that sets off alarms when you've spent years reading people for a living. Still, I didn't act on it. Not yet. Then came the morning that changed everything. It was just after 7 a.m. when I stepped outside and immediately felt something was off. The garage door was slightly open, not wide, just enough to tell me it hadn't been closed properly. My first thought was that I had made a mistake the night before. That thought lasted about 3 seconds. Then I saw the lock, or what was left of it. The chain was hanging loose, cleanly cut, and the lock itself was on the ground in 2 pieces. That wasn't a mistake. That was deliberate. I didn't rush in. Old habits don't leave you. I stepped back, scanned the area, checked for any immediate signs of someone still around, and then walked in slowly. The space where the snowplow should have been was empty. Completely empty. That moment where realization hits is always the same. Not anger, not panic. Just a very clear, focused awareness that something just got very real. I went back inside, grabbed my phone, and opened the camera app. I had installed a basic but effective camera system covering the driveway and garage entrance. Nothing fancy, just enough to see movement and capture details. I pulled up the footage from early morning and started scrubbing through. At 5:42 a.m., there it was. A familiar figure walking up my driveway. Linda, hoodie, gloves, and a level of confidence that would have been impressive if it wasn't so stupid. She walked straight to the garage, looked around once, and then pulled out bolt cutters from the back of a small utility cart she had parked just off the curb. No hesitation, no doubt. She cut the lock, opened the door, and went straight for the plow. It took her about 6 minutes to maneuver it out and hook it to a small tow setup she had brought. 6 minutes. That told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was planned. I watched the whole thing twice. Then I sat there for a minute, thinking, not about revenge, not about confrontation, about procedure. Because once you've worn a badge long enough, you understand something most people don't. The cleanest way to deal with someone like this is not emotion. It's documentation and patience. I didn't call her. I didn't knock on her door. I didn't send an angry message to the HOA group chat. Instead, I called it in properly, reported the theft, provided the footage, explained exactly what had been taken, how, and by whom. The officer who showed up was younger, probably mid-20s, and I could tell within 5 minutes he had already recognized the situation for what it was. Not just theft, but very stupid theft. I handed him the video, showed him the cut lock, the chain, the empty space. He asked if I knew the suspect. I said yes, gave him her name, address, and a brief explanation of our previous interactions. He nodded, took notes, and said, "We'll handle it." Now here's where things got interesting. About 2 hours later, I got a knock on my door. Not the police. Linda. She was standing there with her usual posture, except this time there was something different in her expression. Not confidence, something closer to irritation mixed with uncertainty. "We need to talk," she said. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and said, "Go ahead." She launched into a speech about how the snowplow had been reallocated for community use, how the HOA had the authority to manage essential winter equipment, and how my lack of cooperation had forced them to take action. I let her finish. Then I asked one question. "Did you cut my lock?" She hesitated, just for a second, then said, "It was necessary." Necessary. That word always sounds different when it comes from someone who has no idea what it actually means. I told her, very calmly, that she had about one chance to return the plow before things got worse. She crossed her arms and said, "You're overreacting. This is for the community." I nodded. Then I said, "Okay." And I went back inside, because at that point, the conversation was over. She had just confirmed everything on record. The next part played out exactly how I expected. About an hour later, 2 patrol units rolled into the neighborhood and stopped in front of her house. I watched from my window as officers knocked, spoke to her, and then walked around to the side where, sure enough, my snowplow was sitting in her driveway, still attached to her little tow rig like she was proud of it. The discussion didn't last long. I didn't hear every word, but I saw enough. Her posture changed. The confidence dropped. The hands started moving more, defensive, explaining, trying to reframe what had already been clearly established. Eventually, one of the officers gestured toward the plow, then toward the patrol car. That's when it clicked for her. This wasn't an HOA issue. This wasn't a community decision. This was theft. Plain and simple. And she had done it on camera. Within 30 minutes, I got a call from the responding officer asking me to come over and identify the property. I walked down, confirmed it was mine, and watched as they documented everything. Linda avoided eye contact the entire time. The same woman who had walked onto my property like she owned it was now standing there, quiet, smaller somehow. The officers explained the situation to her in terms she couldn't twist. Cutting a lock, entering private property, and removing equipment without permission is not community management. It's a crime. And because I had done everything properly, reported it, documented it, stayed calm, there was no room for her to argue her way out of it. In the end, the plow was returned that same day. Charges were discussed, and while I won't get into every legal detail, let's just say her version of helping the community turned into a very expensive lesson about boundaries, property rights, and the difference between HOA authority and actual law. The HOA itself went quiet after that, real quiet. No more emails about equipment management. No more talk about approved snow clearing methods. Funny how quickly rules disappear when they run into reality. As for me, I went back to doing what I had been doing all along. Clearing my driveway, helping the neighbors who actually appreciated it, living my life without needing anyone's permission to use my own property. And every time I lock that garage now, I take a second to look at the new, much stronger chain and remember something simple. People like Linda don't stop because you argue with them. They stop when consequences show up. And sometimes the best way to deliver those consequences is to just step back, follow the rules, and let them walk straight into them. So tell me, if someone cut your lock and stole your equipment thinking they had authority, would you have handled it the same way? Drop your opinion in the comments and subscribe for more HOA revenge and malicious compliance stories.